And how important is the theater work within the body of your career? You have a huge quantity of films being done, but also a very important work in theater. It was a great opportunity for us in this festival to be able to see the Steppenwolf productions. It's a very important piece of your work, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a person of the theater. I had nothing to do with movies until I was 29 years old. And I did much more theater work even after I started movies than I did movie work. And I've done probably around 100 films. But I never stopped working in the theater ever, either as an actor, director, costumer. And I never will as long as I'm working, because that's my education, that's my background, that's where I come from.
And how is it to do a theater play within a film format, which you've done?
Several times I did Of Mice and Men. I did The Glass Menagerie.
Exactly.
I did a TV representation of a play called True West in America. I did Death of a Salesman, which was a kind of a halfway thing. It's often very difficult for me to think of theater becoming cinema. It's very odd for me, a very weird step. But I have done it a few times. I never really did it as a director. In other words, the plays we've seen here at the festival in Lisbon and Estoril, they're all just captures of plays. They're not. They were never intended.
Yes.
They were none of them are directed at all. So for me, it's odd to see, but some of them make better movies than most movies. So that's what's really funny about it. When you see it's terrible to say this at a film festival, but the power of a great play can never be matched by the power of a great movie. Oh, because the play is living. Mm-hmm. And a play, you had to be there. A movie, you can see at any time, and it's always the same. It'll always be the same. You may change, but the movie is the same.
It's really true. It's really true. Well, our microphone, there's a microphone in the room, so if you want to join us, please do it. It's a great opportunity for us to talk. Since I have the lights on my eyes, I can't see where the question comes from, but I hope they come. And, well, there's one over there.
Let's try to break the ice here. Two questions. The first question is related to the look of the mise en scène. The sort of a Kafkaesque, paranoid, oppressive look that the audience feels. Was it a directorial decision, or was it influenced by an idea that the American audience was, for a long time, especially the average non-New Yorkan audience, was conditioned by the consciousness of a oppressive Cold War time? That's question number one. Question number two is, because of this, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1994 that the play was opened.
I think so. I don't.
It's mid-90s. Yes.
It was right after Reagan administration, I believe. I think it was beginning of or mid of the first George Bush, right?
And 94 should be Clinton already.
1990 something?
94 should be Clinton already.
Clinton already.
It's Clinton.
All right. So how was the reaction of the media in general? I mean, I'm talking about the average media, not the New York Times, etc.
I don't remember, because we only did it in Chicago. We didn't take the play to New York. The New York Times reviews most of our plays, but I don't, even in Chicago, but I don't actually remember if they reviewed this. I don't really read reviews, and I don't know how the media reacted, because it's not so much my job. And as far as the atmosphere, I mean, there wasn't so much a Cold War atmosphere then, because the wall fell in '89, and there was more a kind of sense of, I mean, I agree with what Gorbachev said the other day, a kind of a sense of American triumphalism. But this play more addresses the American psyche's tragic wound. And I think it's related to the Cold War and the Russians only to the extent that Oswald was a quote, Marxist, whatever that means, which I've never really been able to ascertain, and lived in Russia and was sometimes thought to be KGB trained, which I don't believe at all, but okay. But that atmosphere was the atmosphere I grew up in as a little kid. We had nuclear war drills where our response to the coming nuclear war, which was sure to be coming in a day or a week or a month or whatever, was to practice kneeling under our school desks. And while the Europeans were Che worshiping La Che, who I always considered one of the stupidest people who ever lived, aside from Sartre, Che was calling for the nuclear destruction of Washington and New York. That's who Che was when he wasn't murdering school children. That's who Che was. So there was a degree of paranoia, but paranoia bred from experience. Because the fact is, if we look at, say, the book Everything Was Going Our Way, a history of the KGB as told by the biggest KGB defector ever in history, there were some very bad things going on. So paranoia wasn't really wholly paranoia. Paranoia was also recognition of who Stalin was, quite profoundly, which Europe completely ignored and lied about, really, for decades. Most especially the French, but all the European left also were collabos in somebody who murdered many more than Hitler ever murdered, in point of fact. And yet, So I wouldn't really call it paranoia. I would call it the mood of the time. And with paranoiac elements, yes, because that's the history of every war, is lies. And the history of every war is the kind of fog of war, and to demonize the enemy. But they also were a very real enemy. And I'm really curious. I probably won't live to see it. Hopefully some of you guys will. I'm really curious as to why these records are locked up. Could have wholly been, as DeLillo imagines, a completely American story. Totally. We don't need the KGB to create havoc. We do it beautifully ourselves. But I'm really curious as to what that will reveal. So the atmosphere is the atmosphere I grew up in. And not so much an atmosphere of when the play was done. That was kind of really finished. Although the novel was before the fall of the Berlin Wall. I believe I read the novel on the way to China in the winter of '86 or early '87, maybe very early '87. Then it was probably published in '87 or '88. I actually don't remember. But I think when it was published was less of interest than the kind of atmosphere Don DeLillo grew up in and I grew up in, I'd say.
Muito obrigado. Uma outra questão. Ali atrás. Deve estar ligado agora.
Não, já está ligado. Obrigada. Kind of related to the earlier question, I really enjoyed the film, and I was at the end I was a bit surprised at the audience reception and the applause. It seemed almost genteel, given the sort of strongness of the subject.
They didn't like it much. I mean, in all honesty, and that could have been some failings, obviously, on my part, and failings in the production. I don't think there's any failings in the original material. But it really upset people.
Right. And do you think that was because it was in America? If it had been anywhere else, it might have had a stronger reception?
I think it would have had a huge success almost anywhere else.
Should have taken it to London.
Well, we talked about that with a friend of mine, Simon Bush, who I've worked with in the West End and who runs a theater in Plymouth, who loved it. We talked about that, but I think, on the other hand, it's an American story, and it's a world story as well, but my feeling was it really upset people. When people saw the shot of the headshot repeated 3 times on a screen 8 stories high, they really weren't happy. And they kind of wanted to get out of there and wanted it to be over.
Wow.
That was my feeling, and wanted it to be over in a way I've directed plays before I wanted to be over because they weren't good. But that's not the feeling I got with Libra. They wanted it to be over because it was upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
It was my feeling. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was my feeling.
Okay.
Creio que tinha aqui outra questão, não era? Força.
Let me fulfill the empty space then. Because of the effectiveness of the impact of the play, on one hand, and on the second hand, because of the repetitiveness of this kind of act. 1 year later, Bob Kennedy in LA, then Martin Luther King. Now, there was ever a question for you to come up with a third act and transcend reality, because this is a very effective way of discussing something that happened. I mean, Kafka already told us how to do these things well. So has ever occurred to you to come up with a third act to confront this logic of putting things locked in a vault in the Pentagon, and nobody questions anything about this?
Well, people do question it. The book, it has to be said, was a great success. I mean, relative to Don DeLillo writes very artistic, not super easy novels, but it had a great success. It's a great book. And most people took it, I think, like I took it, and certainly a number of people who saw it took it as a kind of what-if story. What if? Just an act of imagination. But yeah, people do ask constantly, would you mind terribly telling me what the fuck is going on? People ask constantly, they just don't get an answer. And I don't think they're going to get an answer. Not from this administration, certainly, which is thought to be, even by all the American journalists who are all very pro this administration, the most secretive administration in history. Not by the last one, not by the one before that, nor the one before that, nor the one before that. Why is that? I think because we're not thought to be adult, or they always quote Jack Nicholson in that film, "You can't handle the truth." Yeah, I can very well, but that doesn't help me get the truth. And when I look at a story like this, November 22nd, so in other words, it's a kind of a week from now, 1963. So, what is that, 51, 52 years ago? That still, a lot of the records are locked up. How can that, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yes.
Even the KGB opened their archives. even the KGB. I've been to the KGB museum. Oh, yet that, for whatever reason, we can't know about. I mean, it's very strange to me, very bizarre, but I don't have an explanation. I don't know.
Alguma questão mais? Temos ainda algum tempo, façam o favor.
By playing several villain characters, what do you find interesting and some common traits in them? And if you had to play...
You didn't get it?
I didn't understand the beginning,
I didn't understand as well.
Oh, okay, sorry. But you played several villain characters, like villain. So what do you find interesting in them and common traits? And if you had to play the role of the person who assassinated Kennedy, how would you prepare? Did I make the question clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I just didn't understand at first. Well, without trying to sound like President Clinton, it kind of depends on what you mean by villain. Is someone a villain, or do they do villainous things, or do they only do things you think are villainous, but the person behind you may not? So that's hard for me. Secondly, I do lots of things. I write and direct fashion films. I do comedies mostly. I played Klimt, I played the King of England, I played the King of France. I played pretty much anything you could think of, male, female, indifferent, in between, whatever. But as a role, you can only choose from amongst that which you've been chosen for. So, say there are 50 films. I may be chosen for 3 films. And I may choose to do one of those films. But that means 47 other films I wasn't asked to do them. So I probably played 10 or even 20, quote, villains in my life. I've done 100 films. I've done 70 plays, 80, 90, I don't know. So I would redirect that question and put it this way. Why does the audience only like to see me do those films? That's the real question. The question is certainly not about a preference of mine or what I feel, or I know many idiot actors always say they love to play the villain. Either they're not very good or they're not very smart, or both. And both are certainly possible. But being a villain or not a villain is not relevant. What's relevant, at least in my career, is people go to see me do In the Line of Fire, but they don't go to see me play Klimt. They go to see me do I don't know, what else? Something else. But they don't go to see me play the great Buck Howard. And the great Buck Howard might be a much better performance than In the Line of Fire. But how many people saw it? 6? 10? 40? So that's how I'd answer that question. Not defensively, really just telling you the actual truth of how the world works. Now, why is that? I don't know. It just is like that.
E mais alguma questão que ainda haja? Faça o favor.
Then maybe I can ask some. Do you believe that the government and the conspiracies are different now from what they were at the time? So if now everything is open and you don't believe there's any reason to keep the files secret anymore, because that would maybe explain if it's still the same and if you still have these issues in the US, maybe that's why they won't open it, because there would be trust issues in the entire country. So,
well, I don't think the issue is just in the US, meaning
yeah, but in this case. In this
case, it's certainly a local U.S. story, but I think it kind of exists everywhere. I really can't imagine why certain of these records are still under lock and key. I can't fathom a reason. And if as you suggest, it's because people wouldn't trust the government. Don't forget, they don't trust the government anyway.
Yes, but what if they knew the whole story? Do you think they would trust the government more? Because if people might think it's bad, if it's worse, probably they...
I see. Well, I would say, but I'm probably a sucker.
Well,
but I would say if the government told us the truth, we'd probably trust them more. That's what I would say, but maybe I'm not very smart. I mean, I don't know.
No, it's not that it's not smart, but you say you can handle the truth, and I do believe it, but when you're talking about the masses, I think it's a little bit different, and a lot of wars and governments, I think they work on the basis of secrecy. And if you eliminate this, there could be a big issue.
Yeah. Well, the architect of Obamacare said, of course, you wouldn't tell the American people the truth because they're too stupid. And this went really completely unnoticed, this remark. I mean, it's amazing if you think about it. But if you ask me, is it true rather than just amazing? Maybe. Maybe people would just prefer to be lied to or be oblivious. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't. But maybe others would.
I think that's not the problem, but the issue here, that there's a group of people that would handle the truth, but I think if you're speaking about an entire country and one as big as the US, for example, and in this case, I think it's something different. And if you expose those things, of course there are a lot of illuminated people that would be better off knowing the truth, but all the rest would
have a reaction that you can't really calculate beforehand. And
sadly, I think you may be right.
yeah.
Actually. Sorry.
It's okay, but we won't, the rest of the people won't know the truth, but I do believe it's for the greater being, but I don't know.
The greater good, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe you're right, I don't know. As
some people believe it. So not that we or you believe that it's for a greater good and you prefer to know the truth, but the ones in charge do believe that it's...
Yeah, and I don't even know if I can say I prefer to know the truth, because it kind of depends on what the truth is,
exactly.
I guess.
I think that's the problem.
I can only take so much.
Yes. Tempo ainda para uma última questão, faça o favor. We have an issue here.
And why not?
Sorry about that.
Not at all.
It's about the relationship between literature, theater, and cinema. It looks like, I mean, you probably know this very well because you've been working, in the middle, left and right of the literature pendulum. So a work like this from a writer that had come from a generation of hardcore influences in literature, do you believe that, I mean, as a member of the audience and also as an artist, I've been feeling this decaying of literature, and in terms of depth, in terms of the exposition of the human consciousness and the efforts of the human to understand, the political plateau and everything else. The right in the U.S. has been really effective in organizing cliches against, anything that escapes the mainstream culture. One term is, liberals. Everything that's not mainstream, he's a liberal. The leaders are liberal.
Actually, progressive.
Progressive. They are improving. So do you believe that, to paraphrase Chomsky, do you believe that there is a need for artists to begin a sort of a movement, as the political right has been done for years, to think seriously about the space of art, literature, and cinema?
Well, I stay away from ideologies, but I take my liberty always. So I think you have to take your liberty. And I think the great writers like Don DeLillo, like Roberto Bolaño, take their liberty. I mean, Bolaño sadly is passed away, but his work very much lives. And what a beautiful work, at least to me it is. But I'm terrible. I kind of always mistrust movements. And I was reminded the other night when I saw the Pasolini film in this room, and Pasolini gave the utterance that everything was political. I don't believe anything is further from the truth. I think everything is personal. And I have a vast mistrust of any political ideology, of most politicians, and of most political movements. I just take my own freedom. And that's That's what I can do. If I were a different person, and which could include a clever person, maybe, no question, maybe I'd see that differently. But all I can do as an artist is take my own space and say, this is what I'm doing. If I were different, and maybe I should have been, and maybe I will be, I mean, I'm only 60, I may see that differently, but I feel like if I can keep saying, no, I only speak for myself, and I see it this way, and maintain my independence of thought and action, that's kind of all I'm capable of. Me. Other people are, whom I profoundly respect, and many of whom I think are great people and often great friends, they take a much more political stance than me. But I can't tell anybody what to do or think or be. I can only say what I think, or what I feel, or what I kind of believe. I mean, belief is not easy for me, but let's say what I think anyway.
Okay, and just to finish, we're coming down to the time we had for this Q&A. You had a chance in this edition of the festival to rediscover images you probably haven't seen for years.
Or never saw.
You never saw these recordings.
I saw Libra. Mm-hmm. I never saw Coyote Ugly the other day. I never saw The Libertine. I wouldn't have seen most of the plays that Paolo brought here.
So how is it to, some are 20-year-olds, some are almost 30-year-olds.
Yeah, sure.
How is it to rediscover these images?
Well, you know, you wish the quality was better.
Definitely, of course. That was the technology available back then.
And, you know, that's all we had. And I had no part whatsoever in any of the captations of all this stuff. It's, you know, it's strange. It's a nice reminder. One can forget, and I think probably should forget, all the things one did, really. It's probably better that way. But it's really great sometimes to revisit things I directed, not at all because I directed them, that's neither here nor there, but to see some of the really wonderful work people gave me. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty fantastic to see. And it's lovely to see how even in a very poor quality, and even this and even that and even this and even that, how the pieces, at least that I was able to see while I was here, hold up quite well.
Definitely.
And, you know, this piece is 20 years old, Coyote Ugly is 29 years old, The Libertine is 18 years old. Caretaker, I didn't see at all. Hysteria, I didn't see at all, which is 14 years old. but it's nice to revisit, but on the other hand, theater always exists, it's ephemeral. It always exists in your head anyway.
It's an experience rather than something to see again on a screen.
Yeah. If I hadn't seen them, I don't think it would have changed what I thought about them at the time, strangely enough. But to see the great work people did, I love, because I love talent. So, that's great.
That's really great. John, thank you very much for being here to share with us your thoughts. E a todos,
Thank you all. Thank you.
teremos a oportunidade para falar lá fora, está bem? Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. Good evening.